Anijadika manaso javiyo nena devana purvam asat tadavato jnana teti tustat tasminato matavisva dadati. Tadejati tanejati tadure tadvantike tadvantarasya sarvasya tadu sarvasya syabhayataha. Yastu sarvani bhutani atmani evanupasyati sarvabhutesu chatmanam tato na vijugupsate. Yasmin sarvani bhutani atmeva budvijanataha tatra ko mahakaha sukha ekatvam anupasyataha. Sa prayagashchukramakayam avrinam asnaviram sudam apapavidam kavir manisi paribhu swayambhu yata tat yutorutam vyadadat chasvatipyaha samabhyaha. Kavir manisi Tatat yutoratan vyadadat chasvatipyaha samabhyaha antam tamaha pravisanti ye vidyam upasyate tato bhuyavate tamo yayu vidyayam rataha. Anya devahur vidyaya anya dahura vidyaya iti susruma dhiranam yenastad vichachaksire. Vidyam cha yasyastad vidobhayam saha vidyaya militum tirtva vidyayam ritamasnute. Andham tamaha pravisanti ye sambhutim upasyate tato bhuyavate tamo yayu sambhutam rataha. Anya devahur sambhavat anya dahura sambhavat iti susumadiranam yenasta vichachaksire. Sambhutim cha vinasam cha yastad vidobhayam saha vinasena militum tirva sambhutam ritamasnute. Hiranmayena patrena satyasya vihitam mukam tattvam pusam apavrinu satyadharmaya dristaye. Pusane kaseyama sriya prajapatya vyuharasman samahatejo yatte rupam kayanatamam tate pasyami yo savaso purushaha sohamasmi. Vayuranilam amritam matedam basmantam sariram om kratos smara kritam smara kratos smara kritam smara. Om Om Agni Nayasupataraye Swan Vishwani Deva Vayunani Vidvan Yodajma Chuhuranameno Buyestam Te Nama Uktim Videma Om Tat Sat. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Bhagavan Satpratapati Jotavya Kitavya Pujas Deyak Pujas Nitya. So today we're beginning mantra 12, if I'm not mistaken. We finished mantra 11. Antam tamaha pravisanti ye sambhutim upasyate tato bhuya vite tamo yayu sambhutam rataha. Antam, ignorance. Tama, darkness. Pravisanti, enter into. Ye, those who. Asambhutim, demigods. Upasate, worship. Tata, then that. Bhuya, still more. Eva, like that. Te, those. Tama, darkness. Ye, who. U, also. Sambhutam, in the absolute. Rataha, engaged. Those who are engaged in the worship of demigods enter into the darkest region of ignorance, and still more so do the worshippers of the impersonal absolute. So please repeat. Those who are engaged in the worship of demigods enter into the darkest region of ignorance, and still more so do the worshippers of the impersonal absolute. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. So you see, this is not something strange. Krishna says the same thing in Bhagavad Gita. So if we look in the 7th chapter, Kamaistaistar hitakyana prapadyante nya devata tam niyamam astaya prakritya niyataksvaya. 7th chapter, 20th verse, Bhagavad Gita. Those whose intelligence has been stolen by material desires surrender unto the demigods and follow the particular rules and regulations of worship according to their own natures. Yo yo yam yam tanum bhakta shradaya chitamichyate tasya tasya chalam shradham tameva vidadam yaham. I am in everyone's heart as the supersoul. As soon as one desires to worship some demigod, I make his faith steady so that he can devote himself to that particular deity. Sataya shradaya yuktas tasya radhanam ihate labbate cha tata kamam mayaiva vihitan hitan. Endowed with such a faith, he endeavors to worship a particular demigod and obtains his desires, but in actuality these benefits are bestowed by me alone. Antavatu phalam te sam tad bhavate alpameta sam devan deva yajo yanti madbhakta yanti mam api. Men of small intelligence worship the demigods, and their fruits are limited and temporary. Those who worship the demigods go to the planets of the demigods, but my devotees ultimately reach my supreme planet. So here we have 7th chapter, verses 20 to 23. Basically condemning, Krishna himself condemning demigod worship. And demigod worship meaning from well, there's 33 million demigods minimum, but the major ones are Lord Shiva, Durga Devi, Lord Brahma, Indra, and then there's so many, Chandra, and Mitra, and many of them. So Ganapati and so forth. So people who worship the demigods, it says they go to the darkest region of ignorance. Why? Because they get stuck in the cycle of birth and death. There's no way for them to get out. Demigods themselves are subject to death, so they can't liberate a person from birth and death. So people simply get stuck by receiving all kinds of material benefits that forces them to take birth over and over again. Therefore, Krishna calls them Abudaya. 724, he says. He calls them Alpamedasa. Alpamedasa means they are less intelligent. Then the next verse, Antavatu phalam te sam tad bhavati alpamedasam. Avyaktam vyaktim apanam manyate mam abudaya param bhavam ajananto mamavyayam anuttamam. 724, he says, unintelligent men who do not know me perfectly think that I, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, was impersonal before and have now assumed this personality. Due to their small knowledge, they do not know my higher nature, which is imperishable and supreme. So, if people engage in worship of the impersonal, absolute, they're considered abudaya, less devoid of all intelligence. Those who do not know the ultimate feature of the absolute. So, Alpamedasa and Abudaya are the two words. Alpamedasa refers to the worshippers of demigods, which means those of small intelligence, and Abudaya refers to the impersonalists. Okay. The Sanskrit word asambhuti refers to those who have no independent existence. Sambhuti is the absolute personality of Godhead who is absolutely independent of everything. In the Bhagavad Gita, the absolute personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna, states, Name vidu suragana prabhavana maharshina aham adir hidevanam maharshinam chasarvasaha. Neither the hosts of the demigods nor the great sages know my origin or opulences, for in every respect I am the source of the demigods and sages. It's interesting, they don't mark the verse, but Bhagavad Gita 10:2. Yeah. Thus, Krishna is the origin of the powers delegated to demigods, great sages, and mystics. Although they are endowed with great powers, these powers are limited, and thus it is very difficult for them to know how Krishna himself appears by his own internal potency in the form of a man. So, what's the whole purpose of studying the Bhagavad Gita and the Isopanisad? It's to understand that Krishna is not an ordinary person, although he may look like it. And many people make this fundamental mistake, thinking that he's just some extraordinary, ordinary person, something like us, or he might be a demigod. Even the members of the Yadu dynasty, some of them thought that Krishna was just a demigod. Even the members of his own family. Yeah. Yes. That's 9th chapter, 14th verse, I think. 11th verse, yeah. Fools deride me when I descend in a human form. They do not know my transcendental nature as the Supreme Lord of all that be. So Mama Bhuta Maheshwara. They don't understand that I'm the Supreme Proprietor of everything. And here it says, Mamabhyayam Anuttamam. They don't understand my transcendental nature of Avyayam. I'm imperishable. Right? So the problem about understanding Krishna correctly is the purpose of Vedic knowledge. Vedaischa sarvirham eva vedya. Krishna is to be known through the study of the Vedas. He's the goal of the Vedas. And anyone who thinks that he's an ordinary person, or maybe a little bit more special than human beings, maybe a demigod, they're actually blasphemous of the Lord. Or that the Lord is some temporary manifestation coming out of the impersonal Brahmajotis. Another misconception, and it's actually insulting. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, not necessarily. Not necessarily. Like right now, you and me, we're like ordinary people, right? We're not like, we don't live in Medina in a $15 or $20 million house, right? You live in an apartment, I live in a little room over here, right? You don't have a chauffeur, I don't have a chauffeur, right? And so forth. So we're just ordinary people. If we go around the room here, everyone here is just an ordinary person, right? Do you see any multi-billionaires in this room? Huh? No. So, see, that's the drawback of being some big guy. And just imagine a demigod, how big they are. They're not in a favorable position to understand this. Because they're so materially exalted, it goes to their, it inflates their false ego. So your premise is not good. It's the ordinary people like us that are in a better situation. Why? Because what's the first principle of the culture of knowledge? Amanidvam, which means humility. That's the first principle. Now, how do you expect some big guy to be humble? Because their ego is inflated with all that power and money and prestige and everything. So it's very difficult for them to be humble. But it's not difficult for us to be humble because every day we're humble, right? Okay, it can be difficult for us also, but we're in a more favorable position to be able to understand if we're humble. Right? I mean, one can be poor and very arrogant and so forth, but if we are actually humble, then it's easier for us to understand. Yeah, there are great sages, Pulastya and others. There's 7 great sages in the universe. Let's see if I can give you the names right away. Yeah. Well, Okay, it says 10.6, the 7 great sages, and before them the 4 other great sages and the Manus, progenitors of mankind, come from me, born from my mind, and all the living beings populating the various planets descend from them. So, you have the original 7 great sages, then you have the 4 Kumaras, then you have the 14 Manus, so that's 25 great sages, but let's say it's talking about 7, right? So, what are the names of the 7 great sages? What? Yeah, I mean, they're okay, we can find their names, but actually it goes up to 25, right? There are great sages in the universe. Let me see if I have it written down here. One second. I don't think I have it. Well, we can look it up. It's not difficult to find. Okay, your question is, what about these great sages? How come they have a difficulty understanding, right? Yeah, I don't have it written down. We'll look it up. Huh? Yeah, the idea that if we look 10.2, let's take a look at it. It says, for in every respect I'm the source of the demigods and the sages. So it's difficult. It says, even the demigods and great sages have tried to understand Krishna by their mental speculation, and they have failed to do so. In the Srimad Bhagavatam also it is clearly said that even the great demigods are not able to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They can speculate to the limits of their imperfect senses and can reach the opposite conclusion of impersonalism, of something not manifested by the 3 qualities of material nature. Or they can imagine something by mental speculation, but it is not possible to understand Krishna by such foolish speculation. Here, the Lord indirectly says that if anyone wants to know the absolute truth, here I am as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, I am the Supreme. One should know this. Although one cannot understand the inconceivable Lord who is personally present, he nonetheless exists. We can actually understand Krishna, who is eternal, full of bliss and knowledge, simply by studying his words in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. The conception of God as some ruling power, or as the impersonal Brahman, can be reached by persons who are in the inferior energy of the Lord, but the personality of Godhead cannot be conceived unless one is in the transcendental position. So, the demigods are not in the transcendental position. They're subject to the modes of material nature also. Yeah. You're talking about Srimad Bhagavatam, right? Okay, just hold 1 second. I'll write it down. Okay, go ahead. So who are they? 1 second. One second. Yeah. So that's 3, 12, 22? No, it's Srimad Bhagavatam 3. Yeah. Okay. Atri, yeah, okay. So it looks like they changed from one Manu to another, yeah. Yeah. Okay. So even the great sage, but in other words, the main thing is this: you cannot understand God, Krishna, by speculation, no matter how great of a sage you are. And you cannot understand God if you're subject to the modes of material nature. So even the demigods are subject to the modes of material nature. You understand that he is Satchitananda Vigraha. He is not subject to the modes of material nature. He is Shukram. He is omnipotent. And that whole list, right? Avyayam is eternal, with no cessation, no beginning, no end. And that. Okay. Saprayaga Chukam Akaryam Avyayam. So Avranam. So Akayam, right, is unembodied. Right? Avyayam Avranam means that he has no veins, right? Avranam. Asnaviram Sudam Apapavidam, he's prophylactic, he's antiseptic and is prophylactic, right? And so forth. So this is understanding Krishna. He's not like us. He is no different. He's Advaita. There's no difference between his body and his soul. Whereas there's a difference between our body and our soul. So you go down the whole list, the list that was compiled, that we were supposed to compile. I've never seen any of these, neither the questions nor all these things that were corrected, supposed to be corrected. He's the cause of all causes. He knows the source. No one can know the source of Krishna except Krishna himself. So therefore, the demigods don't understand. Right? He's the source of all spiritual material worlds. Natak paratanam nanya. Ham sarvasya prabhavo. Everything emanates from him. He's the maintainer. Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam. So we go down the list. These are all differences between Krishna and the demigods, the sages, and all living entities. This is what we're supposed to know, right? So when are we going to finish all these lists? Where are all the questions? You're laughing. We shouldn't laugh. We should be crying. We have to finish this, right? One. Yeah, Yanti Devam. I read that verse to you the other day. 9th chapter. It says, Yanti Deva Rata Devam Pitrin Yanti Priti Rata Bhutani Yanti Bhuteja Yanti Mad Yajino Pimam. 9:25. Those who worship the demigods will take birth among the demigods. Those who worship the ancestors go to the ancestors. Those who worship ghosts and spirits will take birth among such beings, and those who worship me will live with me. So if someone is thinking of a demigod at the moment of death, they go to the planet of the demigod. Yanti Devam Vrata Devam. Okay? That's 9:25. So, therefore, the main thing to understand is that the Devatas cannot understand Krishna by speculation. And the great sages cannot understand it by speculation. And the Devas can't understand because they're subject to the laws of material, to the influence of the three modes of material nature. Right? So one must be transcendental to the modes of material nature to be able to understand Krishna. That's the main thing you should understand from this when it says neither the hosts of the demigods nor the great sages. Why? Because aham adir hidevanam. I am adir, the origin of all the devas. Right? They can't know my origin or opulences, for in every respect I am the source of the demigods and the sages. So just like you try and find the source of the Ganges. Can you find it? Well, I know, but can you find it? No. That's the whole point. That's why he says that for in every respect I am the source of the demigods and the sages. Therefore, they cannot know my origin or opulences. Just like you cannot know the origin of the Ganga. You can go and there's a cave and there's water coming out of it, but you can't go into the cave. Huh? Gomu, yeah. Are you going to go into the cave? No, you're not going to go. You'll die if you do. Right? So, but where is it coming from? Like you said, it's coming from the lotus feet of the Lord, right? But you would not be able to actually go there and see it. So, in other words, we're limited. We're limited in our perception. Therefore, if you cannot see something, then you have to accept knowledge from a bona fide source of what that is. Otherwise, you have no other recourse. So what did Prabhupada say in the purport? It's at 10.2. He says, basically that. He says, as stated in the Brahma Samhita, Lord Krishna is the Supreme Lord. No one is greater than him. He is the cause of all causes. Here it is also stated by the Lord personally that he is the cause of all demigods and sages. Even the demigods and great sages cannot understand Krishna. They can understand neither his name nor his personality. So what is the position of the so-called scholars of this tiny planet? No one can understand why this Supreme God comes to earth as an ordinary human being and executes such wonderful, uncommon activities. One should know then that scholarship is not the qualification necessary to understand Krishna. Okay, so that eliminates the great sages. Okay? Even the demigods and the great sages have tried to understand Krishna by their mental speculation, and they have failed to do so. In the Srimad Bhagavatam also, it is clearly said that even the great demigods are not able to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They can speculate to the limits of their imperfect senses and can reach the opposite conclusion of impersonalism, of something not manifested by the three qualities of material nature. Or they can imagine something by mental speculation, but it is not possible to understand Krishna by such foolish speculation. Here the Lord indirectly says that if anyone wants to know the absolute truth, here I am, present as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I am the Supreme. One should know this, although one cannot understand the inconceivable Lord who is personally present. He nonetheless exists. We can actually understand Krishna, who is eternal, full of bliss and knowledge, simply by studying his words in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. The conception of God as some ruling power or as the impersonal Brahman can be reached by persons who are in the inferior energy of the Lord, but the personality of Godhead cannot be conceived unless one is in the transcendental position. So this eliminates the demigods, it eliminates the great sages. Great sages are trying to understand the Lord by speculation. They can't. And the demigods are trying to understand the Supreme Lord, but they're still subject to the modes of material nature. Therefore, they can't. This is what you have to understand. Okay? So, to understand Krishna, you have to rise above the influence of the modes of material nature. And as Kumar Prabhu quoted 14:26, Mam chayo vibicharina bhakti yogena sevate sagunam samatitya itam brahmabhuyaya kalpate. You can only do it by undivided devotional service and not fall down under any condition. Then you can transcend sagunam samatitya, the modes of material nature. Okay. Trying to understand the Lord by speculation, it's impossible. He's all over the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says it, and in the purports, Prabhupada says it many times. It's impossible. And here he's saying also, many philosophers and great rishis or mystics try to distinguish the absolute from the relative by their tiny brain power. This can only help them reach the negative conception of the absolute without realizing any positive traits of the absolute. So, therefore, if you use nyaya, what is nyaya? It's logic, right? So, with nyaya you say, the absolute cannot be this microphone. It cannot be the harmonium. It cannot be the floor. It cannot be the carpet. It cannot be you. It cannot be me, right? So you keep going neti, 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 neti. You end up with the flip side of vyakta, of the manifest material nature. And that's called avyakta. So what is avyakta? It's an impersonal concept. It's sunyavad, as the Buddhists imagine. Or it's a little bit better than that. It's mayavad, as the impersonalists. Right? Why? Because what you are negating, whatever you end up with, is a function of what you negated. It's not something positive. If you understand that. What you end up with by neti neti is a function of what you negated. Okay, in mathematics is a concept of function of something, right? So, if you use neti neti, the absolute cannot be this, cannot be that. Your concept that the absolute you arrive at is a function of what you negated. It's not something positive. Right? You see my point, right? So, in order to come up with something positive, you have to be in a transcendental position. You have to be transcendental to the modes of material nature. You have to, right? When you're doing neti neti, you're still subject to the modes of material nature. Because you're rejecting things that are subject to the modes of material nature. So what you end up with is the flip side of that. That is avyakta state. That's what the Buddhists do. Buddhists use nyaya to try and understand the supreme state. So they end up with nirvana, or sunyavad. nothingness, or some kind of oblivion. Right? You reject everything, you end up in some kind of an oblivion. But you don't end up with Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the unimaginable achintya, Veda Abheda Tattva personality. So, therefore, we do not use the mundane process of logic to understand Krishna. What process do we use? We use the process of devotion. Huh? What? Yeah, listening. But even listening doesn't work unless you engage in devotion. If you listen with imperfect senses, will you understand? No. But if you engage in devotional service, you purify the senses. What did we read the other day? It was explaining how the material senses are a covering of our real transcendental senses. The whole material body is a covering of our spiritual body. So by engaging the material body in the service of Krishna, it becomes purified. Then the spiritual body and the spiritual senses begin to act. That's the whole philosophy right there. Right? Then you can perceive with purified senses. But as long as we have, and this is explained in many places in Bhagavad Gita, it's going to be explained in this purport too. As long as we have material desires, that is called Maya, and it's a covering. It's like a cloud that covers the sun. Actually, a cloud doesn't cover the sun, it covers our eyes. The sun is not covered by the clouds. It's our eyes that are covered by the clouds. So our eyes become covered by the desire for sense gratification. So this is explained, 4th chapter, 24th verse, Brahmarpanam Brahmahavir Brahmagno Brahmana Hutam Brahmaiva Tena Gantavya Brahmakarma Samadhina. It says, everything that exists is situated in the Brahma Jyoti. But when the Jyoti, the spiritual light emanating from Krishna, is covered by illusion, in parentheses, Maya, or sense gratification. So you see, illusion equals Maya equals sense gratification. So when a person is infected with the desire to please their own senses and not please the senses, and not use our senses to please Krishna, then we fall into the trap of Maya. As soon as you fall into the trap of Maya, your intelligence, your power of perception, everything becomes clouded. You cannot see properly. Right? Like, for example, they caught this one man he engaged in child molestation. So when they looked, they searched his computer, they searched his house. They saw a trove of movies, literature, things all about child molestation. He was like studying it day and night, right? So what did that do? It clouded his mind. And what does he end up doing? He ends up molesting children. You see? So that's Maya. Maya means illusion, and it's equal to the desire for sense gratification. As soon as a person desires to please their own senses rather than Krishna's senses, their mind becomes clouded. They don't see things as they are. And then they begin to act in very strange ways. Therefore, one time there was a person in court, and the judge wanted to have a psychological evaluation of this person, so they called a psychologist or a psychiatrist. There's a little difference between psychiatrists and psychologists. Psychiatrists study the mind scientifically. Psychologists study it according to Freudian theory or Jungian theory. There's different psychologists. They study how the mind works through interactions, whereas the psychiatrists study how the mind works chemically and through the nervous system and things like that. So you ever learn the difference between a psychologist and a psychiatrist? So anyway, so they called a psycho in, and he analyzed the person. He came back to the court, and the judge said, "So is this man crazy?" He said, "Well," he said, "that depends, Judge." He said, "Depends on what?" He said, "It depends how you define crazy." He said, "You can't really say this man is crazy and you and me are not crazy. Everybody's crazy, Judge, but there's degrees of crazy. It's just degrees. Can we say this man is more crazy than you and me? Yes, we can say that. But we can't say, you and me are not crazy and this guy is crazy, because we're all crazy." He's telling the truth. We're all crazy. We're all walking around in a fog thinking that the goal of life is sense gratification. So there's just different degrees of crazy. Yeah. So the Prabhupada wrote that famous little article. He said, "Who is crazy?" Right? Everyone's crazy. That's why we're in the material world. What? What kind of test? What is that? Okay. Well, the truth is we're all crazy. That's the truth. Otherwise we wouldn't be here, right? So, okay. So when matter, the absolute truth covered by Maya is called matter. Matter, dovetailed for the cause of the absolute, regains its spiritual quality. Krishna consciousness is the process of converting the illusory consciousness into Brahman, or the Supreme. When the mind is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness, it's said to be in samadhi, or trance. Anything done in such transcendental consciousness is called yajna, or sacrifice for the absolute. In that condition of spiritual consciousness, the contributor, the contribution, the consumption, the performer, or the leader of the performance, and the result or ultimate gain, everything becomes one in the absolute, the Supreme Brahman. That is the method of Krishna consciousness. Okay. That is 4th chapter, 24th verse. Right. So, the definition of the absolute by negation is not complete. Such negative definitions lead one to create a concept of one's own. In other words, a speculative concept. Thus, one imagines that the absolute must be formless and without qualities. Such negative qualities are simply the reversals of relative material qualities. See, it's a function of what you reject. It's not positive. And therefore also relative. If what you reject is relative, what you end up with is relative also. It's not absolute. By conceiving of the absolute in this way, one can at the utmost reach the impersonal effulgence of God, known as Brahman, but one cannot make further progress to Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead. That's why you have so many impersonalists, because even the best speculators, the best logicians, they still end up with something negative. They don't end up with something positive. You see? Such mental speculators do not know that the absolute personality of Godhead is Krishna, that the impersonal Brahman is the glaring effulgence of his transcendental body, or that the Paramatma, the Supersoul, is his all-pervading plenary representation. Nor do they know that Krishna has his eternal form with its transcendental qualities of eternal bliss and knowledge. The dependent demigods and the great sages imperfectly consider him to be a powerful demigod. You see? I told you. And they consider the Brahman effulgence to be the absolute truth. But the devotees of Krishna by dint of their surrendering unto him and their unalloyed devotion, can know that he is the absolute person and that everything emanates from him. Such devotees continuously render loving service unto Krishna, the fountainhead of everything. That's mantra 12, what we're on today in the Isopanisad. In the Bhagavad Gita 7:20-23, see what we just talked about in the beginning. It is said that only unintelligent, bewildered persons driven by a strong desire for sense gratification worship the demigods for the temporary relief of temporary problems. Since the living being is materially entangled, he has to be relieved from material bondage entirely to attain permanent relief on the spiritual plane, where eternal bliss, life, and knowledge exist. Sri Isopanisad therefore instructs that we should not seek temporary relief of our difficulties by worshipping the dependent demigods, who can bestow only temporary benefit. Rather, we must worship the absolute personality of Godhead Krishna, who is all attractive and who can bestow upon us complete freedom from material bondage by taking us back home, back to Godhead. This is very profound. So, in other words, what is Prabhupada doing? This is advanced epistemology. Epistemology means, how do you know something is true? Right. So, the process of knowing is based on, first of all, understanding the limits that we have. So we're limited by 4 defects. We're limited by trying to understand things by direct seeing or by inference. Right? No. By hearing you can understand. But by hearing from the right source and by engaging in devotional service, you can understand. But you cannot really understand by direct seeing, nor can you understand by inference. Right? And you cannot really understand by inductive process of knowledge. And you cannot understand by the imperfect deductive process of knowledge. Okay, so here it's saying, even if you are a great sage, you'll not be able to understand Krishna simply by speculation. And even if you're an expert in logic, or even philosophy, you're not going to be able to understand. And even if you're a demigod, and very exalted, still you will not understand, because if you have even a tinge of influence of the modes of material nature, you won't be able to understand. You have to be transcendental to the modes of material nature to understand Krishna, who is himself transcendental to the modes of material nature. Mohitam nabijananti mam evyam param avyayam. So Krishna explains in the 7th chapter that he's above the modes of material nature, but we are not. So he says, deluded by the 3 modes, goodness, passion, and ignorance, the whole world does not know me, who am above the modes and inexhaustible. So unless we become, that's 7:13, unless we become above the modes of nature, we cannot understand Krishna. What? Well, some were born and some became. Well, you have like Ramanujacharya is supposed to be what, the chakra of okay, Sesha, right. So he, right from the beginning, is born like that. Yeah. There are others that, achieve that through sadhana bhakti. There's sadhana siddha, kripa siddha, and nitya siddha. So sadhana siddha You become perfect through following sadhana bhakti, rules and regulations strictly, under the guidance of bona fide spirituals. Then there's kripa siddha. You didn't follow any rules and regulations, but you were blessed by the Lord himself, or by a pure devotee. And then there's nitya siddha. You never fell down. You were always siddha. You were always perfect. Okay. Well, you have Dhruva Maharaj, The Lord touched his head with the conch shell, and he followed his guru's instructions, but then he actually met the Lord. He was only 5 years old. The Lord touched his head with his conch shell. Boom. He started speaking profound Sanskrit verses, glorifying the Lord. Nitya Siddha, those are persons who descend from the spiritual world for a specific purpose, Well, no. You would have like no, Narad Muni is people. You'd have people like Tulsi Devi. She descended from the spiritual world. We can look into that more. I'm not an expert on that, but I'm not an expert on the examples. I know the principles, So I understand. Yeah. But we have to double check the examples I gave. All right. So therefore, Sri Isopanisad therefore instructs that we should not seek temporary relief of our difficulties by worshipping the dependent demigods who can bestow only temporary benefit. Rather, we must worship the absolute personality of Godhead, Krishna, who is all attractive, and who can bestow upon us complete freedom from material bondage by taking us back home, back to Godhead. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita 7:23 that the worshippers of the demigods can go to the planets of the demigods. The moon worshippers can go to the moon planet, the sun worshippers to the sun, etc. Modern scientists are now venturing to the moon with the help of rockets, but this is not really a new attempt. With their advanced consciousness, human beings are naturally inclined to travel in outer space and to reach other planets, either by spaceships, mystic powers, or demigod worship. You see. So our people are using the wrong technique. It's like, yeah. In the Vedic scriptures, by the way, if you study the pyramids carefully, the whole idea of the pyramid was to prepare people for astral travel. Yeah. Yes. Muhammad also went Swarg. So it's possible, as Prabhupada is saying here, we're naturally inclined to travel in outer space and to reach other planets, either by spaceships, mystic powers, or demigod worship. In the Vedic scriptures, it is said that one can reach other planets by any one of these three ways, but the most common way is by worshipping the demigod presiding over a particular planet. In this way, one can reach the moon planet, the sun planet, and even Brahmaloka, the topmost planet in this universe. However, all planets in the material universe are temporary residences. The only permanent planets are the Vaikuntha Lokas. These are found in the spiritual sky where the personality Godhead himself predominates. As Lord Krishna states in the Bhagavad Gita 8:6, Abrahma bhuvana loka punar avarti namirchana mama petya tukonteya punar janma navidyate. From the highest planet in the material world down to the lowest, all are places of miseries, wherein repeated birth and death take place. But one who attains my abode, O son of Kunti, never takes birth again. Sri Isopanisad points out that one who worships the demigods and attains to their material planet still remains in the darkest region of the universe. The whole universe is covered by the gigantic material elements, is just like a coconut covered by a shell and half filled with water. Since its covering is airtight, the darkness within is dense, and therefore the sun and the moon are required for illumination. But when you get to the edge of the universe, there's no illumination. It's profoundly dark. Well, first of all, the horses became afraid because it was absolutely dark. And Arjuna also became worried. But then Krishna said, don't worry, and then he threw the Sudarshan Chakra, and it pierced the covering of the universe, and there's 7 layers of that covering, each one 10 times greater than the other, and then they entered into the causal ocean, the Karana Sagar, and then eventually they saw, and then the Brahma Jyoti, and then they saw Mahavishnu. We read that. Yeah. Outside the universe is the vast and unlimited Brahma Jyoti expansion, which is filled with Vaikuntha Lokas. The biggest and highest planet in the Brahma Jyoti is Krishna Loka, or Goloka Vrindavan, wherein the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna himself, resides. Lord Sri Krishna never leaves Krishna Loka, although he dwells there with his eternal associates. He is omnipresent throughout the complete material and spiritual cosmic manifestations. This fact has already been explained in Mantra 4. The Lord is present everywhere, just like the sun, yet he is situated in one place, just as the sun is situated in its own undeviating orbit. The problems of life cannot be solved simply by going to the moon planet, or to some other planet above or below it. Therefore, Sri Isopanisad advises us not to bother with any destination within this dark material universe, but to try to get out of it and reach the effulgent kingdom of God. So now this debunks Stephen Hawkins. He's going every month. He says we got to leave the Earth. Can't live here anymore. We got to go to some other planet, the moon. You see, Jai Shri Radha Nila Madhava ki Ma Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Bhakti Smriti Bhakti Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Chani Namaste. So Stephen Hawkins is nonsense, full of gobar in his brain. Doesn't know what he's talking about. All right, so we'll stop here and continue tomorrow. So, when it says that the worshippers of the demigods go to the darkest region of ignorance, even if you go to the demigod lokas, it's still in the dark region. It's still within the material universe. And worse still are the worshippers of the impersonal absolute. Because they become blasphemers against Krishna, and then they are placed in wombs of demoniac people because they're blaspheming the Lord. Nirakar, Nirguna. They're insulting the Lord by saying these words. So therefore, Nirahankar. No individuality. So therefore, they go to the darkest region of ignorance. They go to worst. It's worse than the demigod worshippers. Okay, so we'll continue tomorrow. Hare Krishna.